if you think the tax code is complex and doing the right thing by it is kind of tough, you're not alone. The IRS feels the same way. Here with us now is National Taxpayer Advocate Nina Olson. Nina, less than 2 months ago, you were before Congress talking about what needs to be done to simplify and make fairer and make more efficient the tax code. Basically, you think that it has excessive compliance costs, not just for taxpayers, but also for the agency.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Right. Well, we identified the need for tax reform as the #1 most serious problem for taxpayers and for the IRS. And we said, it not only creates problems for taxpayers making errors and thinking that somebody else is getting a break when they aren't, but the IRS is having a hard time. There have been over 500 changes alone in the tax code last year, which is more than one a day.
Between the software guys and the printers and the lawyers, there must never be a light out at IRS.
That's right. And of course, lately we've been having a number of years where the law has been changed in the month of December, where our filing season starts in January, and you can't go ahead and program computers for a law that doesn't exist and isn't, it may be changed. We don't know whether Congress is going to pass the law.
Congress is the source of all this because they pass the laws that try to affect different social outcomes. And then there's the IRS trying to find a way to execute this.
Right.
Is there futility in Congress trying to engineer? I mean, maybe it's not one of your questions that you have to address.
Right.
But
well, I think that the question has to be, does the provision belong in the tax code at all? And there you have to think not only what are you asking the taxpayers to do, is it hard for them to comply with the law the way it's written in the law, but also what is it doing to the IRS? And then all these provisions are supposed to incentivize some kind of behavior. Is it actually doing it? And unfortunately, once it gets into the tax code, it's there for life,
right.
And nobody ever really reevaluates whether it's doing what it should.
The mortgage interest deduction. A lot of people say that it might make housing more expensive, thereby reducing home ownership.
There are a lot of economists that are saying that. The home mortgage deduction is a real easy thing for the IRS to administer because we get a form from the banks at the end of the year saying this is how much the interest is and we can check it against your return. But on the other hand, is it doing what it's supposed to do? I don't know the answer to that.
Right. So complexity breeds misunderstanding and suspicion.
Yes.
Everybody else is getting a tax break.
Right.
The loopholes are for the other guys.
Right.
The genuine tax breaks are for me.
Right.
So what's in the way of real reform?
I think that what it is that everybody feels like somebody else is getting a break and I'm not, and it breeds that kind of suspicion, and you can't really figure out what's happening with your income tax return. And one of the things we tried to say was that the special interests are really us, that the major breaks in the tax code where the dollars are things like the exclusion for health insurance, the exclusion for retirement savings, the special rates on capital gains and dividends, the home mortgage deduction, the charitable deduction. That's where a lot of the money is if you really want to get a simpler code.
You made a good case that a person earning $100,000 at about the 28% marginal rate or 25% marginal rate is actually paying about a 7% effective rate with all of the deductions and loopholes that apply.
Right. Well, exactly. If their employer provided health insurance, if they put money into a retirement account, if they took their mortgage interest deduction, if they sent their kids to school and got an education, deduction or a credit, all of that, if you really, you'll look that 28% doesn't go to any of those dollars.
Right.
And when you add it up at the end, it might be a 7%. That's one of the examples.
It's like shopping at a store with high price tags, but they always have sales.
Yes, but they have sales on sales on sales. Yes.
So what, as the advocate, what is a politically feasible, manifesto or something an initiative that can be undertaken that would simplify things, make collection easier, make people happier?
Well, we actually, we don't set policy, but we just said tax reform has to happen, and we recommended that you have two parallel conversations. One is about what you want the structure of your code to be. What should be taxed, what shouldn't be taxed, what should be in the code, etc. And you have a separate to that, your fiscal policy discussion.
Right.
How much revenue do we need to raise? What kind of government do we want? And we recommended don't mix them because everybody gets all upset about rates and things like that. And you never have the discussion about what should be in the code. But then you marry them up at some point. And I do think that Congress is trying to do that. The Senate is having hearings. The Ways and Means Committee is having hearings. You've got different people pushing on these things.
And basically, one thing that you think finally is that taxpayers need to have a receipt.
Yes.
What's a receipt?
Well, we thought that people need to know that what they're paying in, and then what are those tax dollars being used for. And we just said, that's something that increases the consciousness that taxes aren't just something that's taken from you, but you do get something back. Whether you like what you get back or not, I don't know, but you need to be informed about that, and then you can act upon that information in the voting booth or writing your members of Congress. But we are really ignorant about what is in our tax system, and I think the receipt is the first step to educate people about that.